In 1973, if you walked into a BMW dealership in Munich and bought the fastest, most expensive, most extreme road car the company had ever built, you drove home with a strange piece of unfinished business. Open the trunk, and there, packed in 3 pieces, wrapped and waiting, was an enormous racing wing. The centerpiece of the entire car, the reason the car existed, and BMW was legally forbidden from bolting it on. German road regulations would not approve a wing like that on a street car, so BMW didn't install it. BMW shipped it in the trunk with the paperwork for the owner to attach in his own garage on his own responsibility. The factory built the most famous rear wing in German history and then handed it to its customers like contraband. The car was called the 3.0 CSL, and the world came to know it by a better name, the Batmobile. It was built for exactly one purpose, to destroy Ford on the racetracks of Europe. It was designed by a man BMW stole from Ford. It was so committed to shedding weight that its doors were aluminum and its windows were plastic, and then so committed to its wing that the trunk lid had to be changed back to steel because the lightweight one would have crumpled under the downforce. And it worked. 6 European championships, a class win at Le Mans, the birth of an entire letter, M, that BMW still prints money with today. But to understand why a company would build a road car whose most important part was illegal to install, you have to go back 14 years earlier, to the day BMW itself was nearly wiped off the map in a shareholders' meeting that lasted into the night.
So, here's the setup. It's December 9th, 1959, and BMW is dying. Forget everything the badge means today. In 1959, BMW was a company with a magnificent engineering reputation and a catastrophic product line. At one end, gorgeous hand-built luxury cars and the achingly beautiful 507 Roadster, cars that lost money on every single sale. At the other end, the Isetta, a bubble-shaped microcar you entered through the front door. Luxury barges and motorized eggs, and absolutely nothing in between. Nothing for the growing German middle class that was busy buying Volkswagens and Opels by the hundreds of thousands. The losses piled up until the banks ran out of patience, and waiting in the wings, with an offer prepared and the board's blessing, was BMW's oldest rival, Daimler-Benz. The plan put before the shareholders that December day would have folded BMW into the Mercedes empire, effectively ending it as an independent car maker. The proud propeller badge would have become, in time, a subsidiary asset. It should have been a formality. It wasn't. In one of the great revolts in corporate history, the small shareholders and BMW's own dealers, the little people in the room, rose up, led by a Frankfurt lawyer who picked the restructuring plan apart clause by clause and stalled the meeting until the takeover collapsed on procedure. Into the wreckage stepped an industrialist named Herbert Quandt, who, against his own advisors, increased his stake and bet his family fortune on independence. What saved that bet was a car. The Neue Klasse of the early 60s, the crisp, modern, middle-class sports sedan that invented the template BMW still follows. The company that had nearly been swallowed spent the 1960s growing into the most confident young car maker in Europe. But confidence is not the same as respect, and at the end of the 60s, respect in Europe was earned in exactly one arena: touring car racing. Real sedans and coupes, recognizably related to what customers drove, fighting door-to-door at the Nürburgring and Spa. Win there, and every showroom on the continent felt it on Monday morning. BMW knew this. Unfortunately for BMW, so did Ford. Ford of Europe, headquartered in Cologne, barely a day's drive from Munich, had built the perfect weapon for the era, the Capri, a cheap, handsome, long-hooded coupe marketed as the working man's fast car, and an RS 2600 racing trim, a genuine monster. Through 1971 and 1972, the Cologne Capris did to the European Touring Car Championship what a wrecking ball does to drywall: back-to-back titles. BMW's big coupes, elegant, fast, beautifully engineered, kept showing up and kept losing. And here's what made it unbearable in Munich. This wasn't Ferrari beating them, or Porsche. This was Ford, the mass-market giant, the maker of taxicabs and delivery vans, beating Bavaria's finest engineering on German soil in front of German crowds week after week. If you've seen our GT40 file, you know Ford had already spent the 60s humiliating Ferrari at Le Mans out of pure corporate spite. Now, its European arm was doing the same to BMW, closer to home and on a budget. The BMW coupe taking these beatings was the E9, the 3.0 CS and CSI, the shark-nosed two-door many people then and now call the most beautiful BMW ever built. Under its long hood sat the M30, the Big Six, a silky, deep-chested straight six so fundamentally right that BMW would keep versions of it in production for roughly a quarter of a century. The ingredients were all there. The results were not. The problem wasn't the car's soul, it was arithmetic. The racing versions were too heavy against the Capris, and the whole program was run with the polite, part-time seriousness of a company that considered itself above street fighting. To beat Cologne, Munich needed someone who thought like Cologne. So BMW did something gloriously unsporting. It hired the man running Ford's race team. His name was Jochen Neerpasch. As Ford Cologne's competition boss, he had built the very Capri program that was beating BMW. The cars, the drivers, the ruthless operational culture. In May of 1972, BMW lured him across and didn't just give him a race team, it gave him a company, a brand new subsidiary called BMW Motorsport GmbH, a dedicated in-house speed division, one of the first of its kind anywhere. You know this subsidiary. Today, it's called BMW M. Every M3, every M5, every M badge on every trunk lid on Earth traces its corporate bloodline to this one act of poaching. And the very first car to wear motorsport's new identity, the blue, violet, and red stripes over white that became the most famous racing colors in Germany, was the machine Neerpasch was hired to perfect. The lightweight version of the big coupe, the 3.0 CSL. CSL, Coupe Sport Leichtbau. Coupe, sport, lightweight. And the L was not a marketing letter. It was a declaration of war on mass itself. The CSL program had begun in 1971 and evolved in stages. And the logic behind it was the oldest loophole logic in motorsport, the same one that powered the GT40 story. To race a car in the ETCC's production-based Group 2, you had to actually build it. 1,000 road cars, minimum, delivered to real customers. So BMW would sell the public a racing car with license plates in whatever quantity the rulebook demanded. And the engineers around this program took the weight problem personally. Doors, aluminum. Hood, aluminum. Trunk lid, aluminum. Side windows, perspex, plastic, like a proper racer. The steel of the body itself, thinner gauge. Soundproofing, gone. Trim, gone. Bumpers on the most extreme versions, largely a memory. Component by component, the big luxury coupe was starved down toward 1,100 kilograms, a couple of hundred kilos lighter than the car it was based on, a genuinely startling figure for a machine of its size and class. The engine grew in matching stages. First, the familiar 3-liter with carburetors, then fuel injection, and a marvelous piece of rulebook chess. Displacement nudged up by just 3 cubic centimeters to 3,003 cc's for one reason only: to tip the car over the 3-liter line into the big class, where the racing versions could then bore out much further. By the final stage, the road car ran 3.2 liters and around 206 horsepower, while the racing engines, eventually with a screaming 24-valve head, were charging past 300 and climbing toward 400 and beyond as the decade went on. Now, a confession on BMW's behalf, because the comments will find it anyway. Not every CSL was a hair shirt racer. British customers in particular could order what was cheerfully known as the City Package, which quietly put back the steel doors, the electric windows, the carpets, the insulation, and about half the weight savings. a lightweight special ordered heavy by gentlemen who wanted the legend with their luxury intact. The homologation ledger didn't care. A CSL was a CSL, and the count was what mattered. The count and one other thing. Because when the racing CSLs finally got light enough and powerful enough to run with the Capris, they discovered a new problem, one that couldn't be fixed with aluminum. At 200 kilometers an hour and beyond, on the long straights of Spa and the flat-out plunges of the Nürburgring, the beautiful shark-nosed body turned out to be shaped less like a race car and more like a wing itself, the wrong way up. The car went light. The car wandered. The drivers, in the way of drivers, used vivid language about it. The solution would make this car immortal and illegal. Quick pause. If you're enjoying this, hit subscribe. Engine Files opens a story like this every week. Machines that were banned, buried, or born from a grudge. Okay, here comes the wing. Through 1972 and into 1973, BMW's engineers took the CSL into the wind tunnel and came out with a full aerodynamic arsenal, a coordinated system, not a styling kit, with every piece doing a job. A deep front air dam to cut the airflow diving under the nose, a pair of long fins. BMW called them air rails, running down the tops of the front fenders, taming the flow along the flanks and steadying the car in fast bends. A hooped spoiler across the trailing edge of the roof, setting the air up for the main event. And the main event itself, a rear wing of a size no European road car had ever worn. Tall, wide, unapologetic, a piece of pure racing hardware standing over the elegant tail of a luxury coupe. The details tell you how serious the loads were. The CSL's featherweight aluminum trunk lid, the one the engineers had fought so hard for, couldn't take the downforce. On the winged cars, it was changed back to steel. On this one car, BMW added weight on purpose because the wing was worth more than the kilograms. On track, the transformation was everything the drivers had begged for. The light, wandering tail planted itself, the high-speed nervousness vanished, and the CSL could finally use every horsepower it had. The public took one look at the fins and the wing and the whole winged creature silhouette and named it instantly and permanently the Batmobile. There was just one problem, and it sat in an office, not on a racetrack. Under German road use regulations, a rear wing like that simply could not be approved on a street car. The authorities would not certify it. And Group 2's homologation rules required that the aerodynamic parts on the race car exist on the road car, that real customers actually receive them. BMW was legally required by the sport to sell a wing that it was legally forbidden by the state to install. Two rulebooks pointed directly at each other, and in that collision, BMW found one of the most beautiful loopholes in automotive history. The regulations said BMW couldn't fit the wing at the factory. They said nothing about the trunk. So that's what BMW did. Every German market Batmobile left the factory with its rear deck smooth and its trunk full. The great wing disassembled into 3 pieces, packed and delivered with the car. The customer paid for it, owned it, and drove it home. What he then did in the privacy of his own garage with a wrench and an evening to spare was his own affair. The parts existed. The homologation was satisfied. The letter of the road law was untouched. And every inspector, every rulemaker, and every Ford engineer in Cologne understood exactly what had just happened. In Britain and other markets, where the road rules were more relaxed, buyers could simply drive out of the showroom fully winged. But the German delivery cars, with their contraband aerodynamics riding in the back, became the legend. The fastest BMW money could buy, sold with its own crowning piece as a boxed accessory. Homologation, as one British magazine later put it, at its absolute maddest. Let's be honest about the framing, because someone in the comments is already typing. Nobody passed a law with the words banned and BMW in the same sentence. What happened is quieter and, honestly, better. The German certification rules of the day simply had no room for a racing wing on a road car, so the state's system said no, and BMW routed around the no with a trunk lid. That's not a press conference ban. That's the kind of ban that actually happens in the real world. A rulebook wall and a company slipping its most important part past it in cardboard. If you've watched our Flathead file, you know this channel's oldest thesis. Rules don't stop great engineering. They just decide where it hides. And the numbers make the whole scheme even more delicious. The rulebook demanded 1,000 road cars. BMW built 1,265 CSLs in all. But the full-winged Batmobile package? That went on only the final 167 cars, built in 2 small batches between 1973 and 1975. Every one left-hand drive, every one a rolling homologation document. A few hundred gentlemen across Europe, some with wings proudly bolted on, some with them still boxed in the trunk, unknowingly holding the paperwork for a racing war. Which BMW now proceeded to win. The winged CSLs arrived in the heat of the 1973 season, debuting their full aero package at the Nürburgring that summer, and the effect was immediate and brutal. The high-speed instability was gone, the lap times fell, and the Cologne Capris, kings of Europe for 2 straight years, suddenly found a Bavarian wing in their mirrors that would not go away. By season's end, it was done. Twine Hesmans took the 1973 European Touring Car Championship in a 3.0 CSL, ending Ford's reign, and for good measure, that same year a CSL took a class victory at the 24 Hours of Le Mans, on the same sacred ground where Ford had once broken Ferrari. The student Nearposh had built one empire at Cologne, and then, in 18 months, built the weapon that tore it down. Honesty requires the next sentence. 1974 belonged to Ford again. The oil crisis hit Europe like a hammer that winter. Motorsport budgets were slashed, BMW's works effort stood down, and a Ford Escort took the title in a thinned-out season. The comments would have caught it, so there it is. But what followed settles every argument. From 1975 through 1979, 5 consecutive seasons, the European Touring Car Championship belonged to the 3.0 CSL. 6 titles in all for one basic car, most of them earned after its maker had moved on, with private teams campaigning the old warrior season after season because nothing newer could reliably beat it. Across the Atlantic, CSLs went hunting in IMSA and won at Sebring in 1975, the victory BMW's brand-new American subsidiary used to introduce itself to the United States. And at Le Mans in 1975, a French auctioneer commissioned the artist Alexander Calder to paint his racing CSL, creating the very first BMW art car and starting a tradition that runs to this day. The same machine, touring car champion, endurance class winner, transatlantic ambassador, and canvas. Think about the full arc of this thing. A company 14 years removed from its own near execution, saved in a shareholders' revolt, rebuilt on one good sedan, gets publicly beaten on home soil by Ford. It responds by hiring Ford's own general, founding a motorsport division around him, and putting its most beautiful coupe on a starvation diet of aluminum and plastic. The diet works so well the car becomes aerodynamically frightening, so the engineers grow it a set of wings, and the German road approval system, with no box to tick for such a thing, refuses. Caught between a sporting rulebook that demanded the wing and a civil rulebook that forbade it, BMW threads the needle with a cardboard box and a trunk lid, sells 167 winged witnesses to the public, and then wins 6 European championships, Le Mans Silverware, and America. And here's the last irony, the one that outlived every race. The stripes on that car's flanks, blue, violet, red, belonged to the brand-new subsidiary built for this one war. The war ended, the subsidiary didn't. BMW Motorsport GmbH became BMW M, and the letter that first flew on an outlaw wing became one of the most valuable single letters in the car business. So valuable that when BMW revived the CSL badge on a modern M4, it quietly retranslated the CSL, as if slightly embarrassed that the original stood for a car whose best part came in the trunk. The most profitable division in Munich was born strapped to a wing the German government wouldn't approve. Today, the arithmetic has gone fully vertical. Batmobiles, 167 ever built, remember, trade for sums that would have bought a whole dealership in 1973. Recent examples have been estimated well past the £200,000 mark and climbing, with the best cars far beyond. Collectors check obsessively for the correct steel trunk lid, the fender fins, the documentation, and the most charming cars of all are the handful whose first owners, wary of the law or simply fond of the clean tail, are said to have left the wing exactly where BMW put it, still boxed, still in the trunk. Half a century of appreciation for a part that was never installed. And there you have it, the BMW 3.0 CSL. Born from a grudge against Ford, raised by a defector, starved in aluminum, crowned with a wing the road laws couldn't stomach, and delivered to its owners as a legend with some assembly required. Germany's systems said the wing couldn't go on the car. BMW agreed completely and put it in the trunk. If you ever saw a real Batmobile, or owned an E9, or stood next to that wing in a museum, tell me in the comments, wing on or wing still in the box? And which side were you on in 1973, Munich or Cologne? If you made it this far, subscribe. We open a new file every week.